It's really common for artists to talk about overworking and artwork, but I'm not so sure that that is necessarily always the case. My scandalous opinion is that overworking is a really limited way to think about the artistic process. Because if you tell somebody that their painting is overworked, basically what you're telling them is you've hit the point of no return. It's over. You can't do anything about it at that point. And I just don't think that's always true. If somebody tells me that my painting is overworked, it's alarming to hear that. You're basically being told the piece is over, you've run out of options, and it doesn't look good. I don't think any artist likes feeling that they are backed into a corner and there's nothing else they can do about their piece. For me, a big part of it has to do with a feeling of agency that I, as an artist, can always find a way to continue with the piece. And there is no point of no return. This is not Phantom of the Opera. Telling somebody that their artwork is overworked, it's really not helpful advice because you're basically telling people they have no control. And I really think we are at our strongest as artists when we feel empowered that, yes, we can keep going. We can try to figure out a way to move forward. Now, the way forward is oftentimes really unclear. And sometimes you really, really feel like you cannot go back and make those changes and ever improve the piece. What I tell a lot of artists is, listen, if you really feel like it's overworked and you can't do anything else, give the artwork one more hour. Because if you give it one more hour and you still don't like it, no skin off your back. Nothing has changed. But I've been in so many circumstances where I was so ready to give up on a piece, but I gave it another hour and I thought to myself, you know what? That is a little bit better than what I had before. And sometimes I really get excited about the piece an hour later because maybe in the moment before I was all doom and gloom and was judging myself. And those are all things that we do as artists. But that's why that extra hour is a very simple thing you can do because you could really be just choking the potential of the artwork. And so much of the time when people come to me to critique their artworks, they'll tell me, oh, it's so overworked. And I'll look at it and say, I don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I think you're not really that close to being finished. You've got so much more to do. So oftentimes it becomes this trap that we put ourselves in, that we can't do more, and that never feels good. I always like to feel like there are options. You may not like the other options in the moment, and it's easy to tell yourself, well, that won't work, and Clara's crazy, there's no chance this could ever get better. But I just find as an artist, when we think about the creative process in terms of hyperbole, it's not good for us to say, oh, this works. This is overworked. I can't do this. I can do that. Because the reality of the creative process, it's in that gray zone. It's never that black and white, which is why I always encourage people to get feedback, because oftentimes the thing that feels like the end of the world in our heads, it's actually not as big of a deal, and maybe there's something we didn't notice in the piece that is more problematic. And I do the exact same thing. In my head, it's this melodramatic opera and things are crashing down, but that's where you need somebody to bring you down to earth and say, well, you do have options, and here's where they are. And that's something I really believe we can't do for ourselves. I can't. Anytime I'm struggling with a piece, I will go and talk to one of my artist friends, and then afterwards, I feel so much better. And the thing about getting a critique is that it's not time consuming. Usually when I give people a critique, they can find out in about 2 minutes all the things that are working, the things that need to work on. And it's, oh my gosh, such a relief to have somebody tell you that. I'm sure for some artists, there is such a thing as overworking. And really, you're the only one who can make that decision about how you want your artwork to proceed or not. But for me, I know that once I took away that concept of overworking in artwork, I felt empowered because I started telling myself, you know something? I can do something here proactively. Now, you may not always know what is that thing to do, but that's where it's really helpful to get critiques like we do in art club. I've had so many paintings that I felt like I was fighting this civil war because the painting was not cooperating. I was getting really frustrated. And I've had times where I've repainted things such an absurd number of times. But I think for me, sometimes it becomes this stubborn challenge that, okay, Clara, you're going to keep going. I know this is painful, but I almost feel like I don't want to give up on the piece. And usually what I end up with is a piece that at the very least, I feel I've resolved to the point that I can be satisfied with. I don't need to create a masterpiece and do the best painting I ever did in my life to have a satisfactory experience. And sometimes the satisfactory experience is I worked so hard on this piece. I tried multiple times to work on this area. I never really got it to work, but now I know I have the resilience to push myself through that, because when our artworks become really challenging and we don't know what to do, or panicking a little bit, it's easier to just walk away. But most of the time when I'm critiquing artwork, I look at the pieces and I say, you know what, you're just getting started. Actually, there's so many other things that you could do to this piece before we even talk about getting to the point of overworking. I know it doesn't feel good to keep working on an artwork that you don't think is going well. But the thing is, it's a real roller coaster. I have pieces where 1 minute I think it's the end, and then the next minute I'm thinking, hey, this isn't bad. I think I'm going to keep going. Because I had a student at RISD who passed in this collage for a basic design class. And to be candid, the collage was a mess. This student had a lot of difficulty with the glue. The glue stick was all over the place. It was dirty, and a lot of the pieces of the collage were really sloppy looking. But she finished the piece. And I know she was really afraid to go to critique that day because she knew that her piece was not looking so great. But you know something? She was really surprised because at the critique, I commended her, not because of the way the piece looked, but because she was willing to run the entire race and get to the end, even though she knew her piece was kind of a disaster. Even though she was super frustrated with the technique and did not have an easy time doing that, she knew that whole time she was not going to end up with something amazing, but she still did it. She persisted, she went all the way through the end, and I told her, good for you. That is your lesson with this piece. And sometimes I think using the word overworked can become a really easy excuse we can give ourselves for why it is okay for us to stop working and start again. But I think we have to learn to push through those moments when you look at the piece and you think, oh my God, this looks really bad. It's so easy to walk away when it's like that. But the fact of the matter is, most of the time when I'm working on a piece, I am not happy with it. It usually looks pretty lousy for a long time. In fact, I feel like it's a win if you're working on it and you don't have strong feelings. Feeling a little neutral, I think, is okay. Like, you don't hate it, but you also don't love it to death. I think that's completely normal. So for those of you who have been feeling like you are being told my work is overworked, that may not be the case. It really depends on the artwork. I can't say that there's any hard and fast rule about how to identify what that is, but I know for me, once I took away that word overworked so that it wasn't part of what my work could be, I just felt a lot more empowered. I felt like, wow, I can do this. The world is my oyster. Well, not quite, but anyway, I hope you guys know what I mean.